Well, Ohio State enters the 2023 season in an unfamiliar position, actually underdogs. Yes, underdogs in the Big Ten, at least according to the general public. If you look at Vegas, they are still slight favorites, but a lot of people thinking Ohio State. Ryan Day coming into this year 1-2 against Michigan, lays the egg last year at home, and now he's on the road. Michigan returning Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum, J.J. McCarthy. People thinking Ryan Day possibly falling to 1-3. Buckeyes also replacing their quarterback. It's been a heated battle. Kyle McCord, the inability to separate himself in that race. We're going to be discussing, could this situation where Ryan Day is actually slightly the underdog in the Big Ten, could it actually benefit Ohio State? Now, taking a look at the Buckeyes under Ryan Day, very impressive. They've been virtually a top 6 team since he took over, and they debut as the AP preseason number 3 team. Although ESPN's FPI absolutely loves the Buckeyes 3 points above the number 2 team, they're debuting, according to the metrics, at number 1. And the FPI is mainly based upon recruiting, returning talent. It is funny that they have Ohio State, Bama, and Georgia inside of the top 3, all starting new quarterbacks. Now, one of the things I don't think people really understand is how good this Ohio State defense should be, and I think if they are not ultra elite, and I'm talking ultra elite like top 3, top 5, then it is a major failure by Jim Knowles. There's something, and I'm going to nitpick this, I hear a lot of Buckeyes fans saying, oh, Ohio State's defense wasn't really that bad last year. They were like top 20 in yards per game. If you look back last year at the opponents Ohio State faced in terms of their defense, one of the easiest schedules for a defense to manage. And then they had 2 big games against offenses that, J.J. McCarthy, I guess he's okay, Stetson Bennett, and they were terrible. They allowed 40-plus points in both games, so I don't want to hear they were top 20. Yeah, I mean, they faced no one in the Big Ten last year. It was a horrible conference in terms of offense. That's just an undeniable fact. So I think Ohio State was really propped up by facing a schedule early on last year. I mean, you're talking about facing Northwestern with God knows who at quarterback in a rainstorm with 70 miles per hour wind. Obviously, your defense is going to look good. They faced Indiana in that snow game. Who knows who Indiana was starting? I think they were basically starting a running back at QB. How about Iowa midseason? There was a very easy schedule, and the defense was vaulted up artificially. And now I think Buckeye fans are kind of coping with the idea that, no, Jim Knowles is good. No. Last year was absolutely unacceptable. The philosophy of allowing 5 big plays per game is completely ridiculous. I think Ohio State allowed 5 big plays against Michigan. How did that turn out? The idea that it's okay to allow 5 plays of 20 or more yards, it's so stupid. But this is why Ohio State's defense should be so good. It goes all the way back to the recruiting class of 2021. 24 commits, 7 5-stars. You've got JTT, who, let's be honest, outside of the Penn State game, yes, I guess he generated some pressures, but he was kind of a letdown outside of the Penn State game. I expect him to be an absolute beast this year. He's being mocked inside of the top 10. He should be an absolute unit along the defensive line. Jack Sawyer, can he finally break out playing his natural position as a defensive end? Former 5-star, top 10 overall player, Donovan Jackson, they're certainly going to need him along the offensive line. That's going to be one of the big questions for the Buckeyes. Abuka and Trevion Henderson. So they've got a ton of talent this year based off of that 2021 class. All of these guys juniors. And then how about these 2 sophomores, CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles? Sonny Styles should be starting. This was a kid that if he didn't reclassify, he would be a top 5 player in the class. and that rating has him at 27, but his composite is, I believe, 12th. And then CJ Hicks, my opinion of CJ Hicks is, yes, he should be starting over Steele Chambers. I'm just sick of this whole, oh, he's a senior. I don't care. Play the best player. I'm done with it. We've done the whole thing with the seniors. You've lost 2 straight games. You need to play the best players. CJ Hicks should be starting. But let's just take a look at Ohio State's offense. You've got the superstar Marvin Harrison Jr., the Heisman contender, Julian Fleming. How about Julian Fleming as the number 3 receiver on this team, the former number 3 overall player in his class? He's going into his senior year. Emeka Egbuka, the former number 1 receiver in his class. And then the offensive line, it's a big issue. Now, Ohio State, if you're unfamiliar, really struggled to recruit offensive tackles for a few years. They're starting a 3-star tackle, it looks like, at left tackle, Josh Fryer. Hold your breath and hope he's good, I guess. Donovan Jackson should be really solid. Centers normally are never a big issue. You've got Matthew Jones, who's a veteran guard, returning. And then it does look like Josh Simmons is going to be starting transfer at right tackle. So both tackles are huge question marks. There's no doubt about that. But the skill position is just ridiculous. When it comes to the quarterbacks, I'm guessing, this is my opinion on what Ryan Day is going to do. He thought that McCord was going to take over the job. It hasn't happened, and now it's a real battle, and I'm guessing Devin Brown offers them more offensive upside. He's significantly better in terms of mobility. They're probably going to start McCord, but Devin Brown will be coming in 2 or 3 series into the game, and we're going to be off to the races with a legitimate QB battle during games, which I know people don't like, but you do have to remember, Ohio State at Indiana, they're sitting 30-point favorites. They're not going to lose that game. And then after that, it's Youngstown State, an FCS team, and then Western Kentucky. So certainly very manageable. The starting running back is going to be Trevion Henderson. I think he's one of the most slept-on players right now. He's an absolute superstar. He was playing injured last year. I don't know why the coaches let him go out there, especially against Maryland. The guy was literally limping, but he's a beast, and he's a former 5-star number 1 running back. He has the speed. Mayan Williams is a great short yardage back, number 2. Dolan Hayden, he showed some things as a freshman last year. How about Evan Pryor? Possibly getting in the mix as a pass-catching back, very deep at the running back position. And then you're looking at the defense. I would really like to see Ohio State play all these 4 guys together. JTT, Tyleik Williams, Michael Hall Jr., and Jack Sawyer. That's what I want to see. They also got Tywone Malone, the transfer from Ole Miss, who is a former top 100 player. Tommy Eichenberg, kind of the quarterback of the defense. You can see Steele Chambers starting in front of CJ Hicks. I disagree with that. Denzel Burke. It'll be interesting to see what Denzel Burke does trying to rebound after not playing too well last year. Hopefully Sonny Styles ends up starting. I think it's already been confirmed that he will. And then when it comes to the safeties, I'm guessing the transfer from Auburn will be starting, and then Jihad Carter, who's also a transfer from Syracuse. Good Lord if they start Cam Martinez. Who remembers Cam Martinez last year against Michigan? Oh my God. Let's hope they don't start him. But that's just Ohio State's overall roster breakdown. The gist of it on the Buckeyes this year, they might be slight underdogs if you look at casual people, but really, if you know college football, this is the most talented team in the Big Ten. It's really not close. They're going to have the most players go in the first round. It's not going to be close. They're going to have the most players drafted overall out of the Big Ten. It's not going to be close. So this is by far the most talented team. Now, Michigan, you do have to respect them, obviously. Ryan Day lays the egg last year. The year before, I think it was just Michigan out bullying Ohio State. But last year, it was Day being very timid in the first half. And Ohio State should have been up by so many more points going into the locker room. They had 16 first downs. Michigan had 4. You got to be up by, at that point, you got to be up by double digits. They were not, and it came back to bite them. I do think Ohio State, when you look at the quarterback situation, C.J. Stroud, he was very accurate. And you're going to these 2 quarterbacks, and I think it's going to be a tough adjustment for a lot of Ohio State fans. Both of these guys, in terms of their deep ball, not even close to as good as C.J. Stroud. Although I do think Devin Brown, at least in terms of his mobility, offers a little bit more there. So I do think Devin Brown will end up being the quarterback. But that's really just speculation based on the fact that I thought if it was going to be McCord, they already would have announced it by now, but I guess we'll see. The schedule, let's just be honest, it is a tough schedule. There's no denying it. You're at Wisconsin. That's going to be a 7:30 night game on NBC. You're at Notre Dame week 4. How about Notre Dame getting all this hype now after their week 0 win over Navy? But that's going to be their first huge game on the road. Hostile environment. Penn State at home is never easy towards the end of the season. And then, of course, at Michigan, the game that is the only game Ohio State right now, according to Vegas, is slight underdogs. They're listed +3. That is the preseason line in that one. So a little bit different for Ohio State. Seeing a lot of people thinking the Buckeyes will go 10-2, maybe 9-3. I guess we'll just have to see with the quarterback stuff. I'm more worried about the offensive line for Ohio State than the quarterback. It seems like with Ryan Day, and it's not even just Ryan Day. Any, decent quarterback should be able to put up really good numbers when you've got Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming, Trevion Henderson, Mayan Williams. Hopefully Cade Stover, he had a tough time towards the end of the year last year. Hopefully he can catch now. But it just comes down to the offensive line. More concerned with the offensive line than the quarterback. I think the defense, it needs to be top 3 in the country. There's no excuses. They're too talented. So I guess we'll see what ends up happening. But, of course, this just comes down to Michigan. That's what this comes down to. Ryan Day falling to 1-3 against Michigan. Does he get fired because of it? I don't think so. Believe it or not, even if Ryan Day falls to 1-3, I think that because the 12-team playoff is coming, they will keep him. But this is certainly a tipping point for Ryan Day and his legacy as an Ohio State Buckeyes coach. You go to 2-2, you even it back up. You've got the game next year at home with Michigan, possibly in a weird situation. Maybe losing J.J. McCarthy, losing Blake Corum at that point. You're back in the driver's seat. But if you lose this game, now you're 1-3. And there are even more questions, although you can say what you want. Last year was very strange because Ohio State, for all intents and purposes, I know people will say, well, they should have beaten Georgia. They looked really good. And that is true, but let's also remember the only reason Ohio State was there is because USC lost. If USC wins, Ohio State ends the season playing a completely meaningless Rose Bowl, I guess, at that point. And everyone has a sour taste in their mouth. So Ohio State, because they got blown out at home by Michigan, their fate was not in their own hands. They got lucky that Utah crushed USC, and then they kind of flipped the narrative on its head. I watched that complete Ohio State-Georgia game. Everybody knows it. Even Georgia fans were admitting it. Ohio State was the better team. It's unfortunate the way it ended, but you do also have to understand, you gotta beat Michigan. You've just got to beat Michigan. No questions asked. You have more talent. It's not close. Way more talent. J.J. McCarthy's a fun little player. I compare him to Alex Smith. He's a good game manager. You got to go beat Michigan. So we'll have to see. That's it for Ohio State. Like, if Ohio State goes 11-1, but they lose to Michigan, yeah, I mean, that's tough, but if you go 11-1 and lose to Penn State and beat Michigan, and possibly then you're in the Big Ten Championship, the problem with losing to Michigan is it's a double whammy because Michigan, of course, if you lose to them, you lose the tiebreaker, and you would need them to lose 2 games to make it to the Big Ten Championship. But we will see this year for the Buckeyes. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.